Obviously, Faisal, I want to go to you. Dave brings up an interesting point about terrorism. Lots of finger pointing in the region, but Qatar and Saudi Arabia have generally been on opposite sides. If you look at Libya, for example, if you look at Egypt, if you look at, for example, different factions in the Syrian civil war, Tunisia, you could go on. Is this basically what it is? Regional rivalry, looking for supremacy in the region?
I think, and I believe that the issue on hand is that Qatar behavior for the past 20 years, trying to intervene in these state nations in the region, trying to overthrow government in the region, is what made it necessary for this country to react to Qatar. I don't think it's a regional dispute. I believe that the issue in hand is Qatar supporting elements within these countries to try to overthrow government. Saudi Arabia did not intervene in the Libyan affair. Saudi Arabia tried its best to accommodate Qatar issues. However, also would like to address the gentlemen in Boston and our guests.
Quickly, yeah.
It's not a blockade. It's a boycott, which is the right of
Come
sovereign
on, let's
nation.
call a spade, sir.
It's not. It's a sovereign nation feel threatened by Qatar behavior for the past 20 years. And it's
go and read Article 5 of the International Aviation Law. Due to national
security for these nations, they reacted that way.
Kaveh, just respond to that like you were beginning to.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Go ahead, respond to say what you were going to say.
Well, I think that's a lot of hogwash for Saudi aggression against little Qatar. And it doesn't wash in the international legal forums. It's not going to wash if this case is taken to the Security Council and before the international community, because you say it's not a blockade, but, of course, if it sounds and, talks like a dock, it's a dock. And, as I said, international aviation laws are very clear that what is happening to Qatar today should be addressed by the International Aviation Organization. And if they take a measure, it's going to be against Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Bahrain without any doubt whatsoever. So I think Saudis are on the losing side of this struggle, which they are trying to sectarianize Persian Gulf affairs, and Qatar is standing up to that. So in that sense, it's a healthy crisis because it prevents greater sectarian conflict in Persian Gulf by creating this Shiite-Sunni divide that President Trump in his recent trip fanned the flame and so forth. Okay. And it's not in the interest of those regional countries, including Saudi Arabia itself.
Faisal, does Kaveh have a point here? The basic Qatar, in a way has played a sort of more mediatory role, reaching out to non-Sunni groups, also to Hamas, to others, to try and facilitate away from this Sunni-Shia split. And just one other question to follow up with. What imminent security threat was Saudi facing to do this?
Based on different reports that Qatar funded and supported different organizations within the kingdom trying to overthrow the government in the kingdom.
That was an imminent threat?
That was a threat. Based on 20 years, Saudi Arabia has seen, and different countries, that they had to react very strongly to Qatar's behavior in the region. Qatar cannot be everything to everybody, and Qatar cannot be friends to everybody. There is, when it comes to national security, Qatar have to choose between the Gulf state, which very supportive to Qatar throughout the years, and Qatar trying to play this contradiction of political philosophy.
Tawfik, I want to bring you in here. Is this what Egypt and other countries in the region are having to do now? Choose between an emboldened Saudi Arabia?
I think the choice is not that. The choice is between fighting and countering radicalism correctly or not. And I see two stages of radicalism.
But in Syria, for example, you can pick, I mean, there are scores of groups.
But I'm talking about funding. Funding is crucial part. And
yes,
I see the US administration has started with funding because it's crucial. But they did not ignore the role of the ideology and the education. If you noticed what Trump said and Tillerson said, they clearly acknowledged the role of education and not teaching hatred, not teaching people to kill one another, not fill the minds of people with intolerance. So what I am saying is, you see all the changes happening after the US administration came to power, which can clearly, from my point of view, relates to countering and fighting radicalism or radical Islam, starting by the funding through Qatar, and then the ideology will come, in my view, and Saudi Arabia, Egypt, other countries has to be involved with this.
Okay, I'm going to ask Dave Marash there, because he must be thinking a little bit what I'm thinking. 9/11, Saudi Arabia. Most of the hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. The funding
but they don't fund.
Just
they don't fund terrorist groups now. Well, that is the difference.
Dave,
ideology need to change.
Is this a bit like the pot calling the kettle black?
Well, I mean, absolutely. In Syria, both Saudi Arabia and Qatar have funded groups that the United States, at least, considers to be terrorist organizations, and are groups that are certainly hostile to the United States and its interests in Syria and the region. I think somebody put it very well when he said that this is really about Qatar's desire to moderate and to be friends with everybody, including Iran. And to Saudi Arabia, friendship to Iran is betrayal of their version of Sunni absolutism. And so they are striking out against the Qataris. And the question, I think, is where does all of this lead? Yesterday, the ambassador from the United Arab Emirates said it's not going to lead to military confrontation, that there will be no Arab state military move against Qatar, but certainly there is a move to constrain the Qatari economy, to threaten the food security and the personal security of people living in Qatar. And this begets an equal and opposite result with, as I say, Turkey talking about moving troops into Qatar. The Saudis are talking about arming Kurdish militias in Syria, which Turkey would regard as a very hostile act. Excuse me, the Turks are in Haktu, that is to say they are indebted financially to both Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and would like to keep both of those money streams going. But the pressure from Saudi Arabia is to choose up sides in the Sunni Shia split and isolate Iran, choose up sides among the various terrorist and nationalist groups within Sunni Islam, and choose those who take dictation from Riyadh.
Okay, that point, I want to go to Kaveh. What's the view in Tehran? Because remember, we had US President Donald Trump talk to the GCC and others, talk about united front against terrorism, and basically united front against Iran too. That seems to have all sort of fizzled the moment he left Riyadh for Rome.
Yeah, well, the Iranians are hopeful that this is a temporary crisis, and through successful mediation by Kuwait, among others, it can be resolved with the mutual interests of all sides in mind. Because, you know, there's an issue of regional security, of peace and stability and tranquility of the region at stake that can be jeopardized if this crisis gets out of hand. And I think there is also a military dimension to this in the long run. But I don't think it's going to get to that point. However, we are witnessing the dramatic bursting of the political bubble. This has very long-term negative consequences for GCC unity. And a lot of countries like Kuwait and Oman are not on Saudi Arabia's part, and Saudi Arabia is going to isolate itself if this crisis drags on.
Faisal, is Saudi willing to talk to Iran, Qatar, and others to find a solution, a way forward here?
First of all, it's a GCC issue. Saudi Arabia and Qatar and different countries.
So you're going to have to settle this within the GCC, is that what you're saying, the Gulf Cooperation Council?
Of course, at the end of the day, the Gulf citizens are all the same. They come from the same tribe, from the same background, from the same religious background as well. I'm just answering the gentleman in Boston who's stating that Qatar is trying to be independent and have its own foreign policy. You have, on the other hand, Oman. Oman is very independent, have its own foreign policy. No country in the Gulf have a problem with Oman because...
Well, they did over the Iran deal, but anyway.
But it was a small, minor disagreement amongst friends because Oman does not try to interfere into the other countries. Qatar, through its media outlet and through the financial support to the Brotherhood, they're playing contradiction politics.
So why didn't Egypt break relations with Qatar, a few years ago? Now that Al-Sisi is in control,
it is very complicated.
Destroyed,
we have many Egyptians working in Qatar.
We're going to have
that is the point
Qatar out of the picture.
Excuse me, sir.
Just let
actually, Saudi Arabia pulled its ambassador from 2002 all the way to 2007, I believe, and again in 2014. And Qatar agreed to certain agreement to send the ambassadors back. Qatar did not deliver in this agreement. So therefore, the Saudi reaction and the other Gulf countries and Egypt and Libya was such a...
Thank you very much. Tawfik, last word, and I just want to throw in this question as well. Does Donald Trump's backing of the Egyptian leader Al-Sisi and King Salman as well help embolden Saudi Arabia's stance here and Egypt's stance?
Sure. It shows them that they are not working alone. They are supported by the world's biggest power or the strongest power on earth, the USA. And I believe that both countries will start some significant change with countering the ideology of radicalism, but the process has to start with funding because this is the most imminent threat to the area is funding the terror groups. And that's why the Qatar issue came at the beginning. But I believe the U.S. administration and the Trump administration sees the whole big picture. If you analyze their words, they were very clear about addressing all components, military, ideological, and economical as well.
I suppose we also have to agree on what terrorist groups are in the first place. Fascinating discussion. I wish we could go on for a long time. All our guests from all over the world, I really appreciate you all coming in. But that's all we have time for. But the conversation, of course, continues online. Chat with us about this or any other show on Twitter. We're at CGTN America. Or visit us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/CGTN America. I'm Nathan King in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for being with us.